There I was, cruising down the gravel driveway just like any other evening, ready to sink into that sweet ranch tranquility I'd worked years to build. The sun was dipping low, casting golden light on the sprawling fields, and the wind carried the scent of sagebrush and freshly cut hay. It was the kind of moment you think you'll remember forever. The calm before dinner, the quiet after a long day. Then it happened. The gate, the very gate that had welcomed me home every single day since I moved in, was locked. Not just stuck or glitching. Locked. Like a fortress. Cold steel standing between me and everything I owned. No warning, no phone call, no, "Hey, sorry, we're upgrading the system." Just locked out. The HOA had pulled the ultimate power move, and frankly, it felt like a punch to the gut. You see, the HOA around here had a reputation for being difficult. And the president, Karen McGrath, she was the kind of person who thought rules were a sacred gospel, except when it came to her own behavior. But locking a homeowner out? That was a new low, even for her. What they didn't know was that this lockout wasn't a surprise to me. Far from it. In fact, the whole thing, the locked gate, the sabotage, the harassment, was a carefully orchestrated drama I had been scripting for weeks. The gate was more than just a barrier. It was a trap waiting to snap shut on the HOA's overreach. So, if you think this is just a story about some HOA gone rogue, think again. This is about how I turned their control games upside down, and how a simple ranch gate became the stage for a little poetic justice. Stick around, because you'll want to see how this trap unfolds, and trust me, the ending is worth every second. Let me rewind a bit and paint the full picture of life on my ranch before the chaos began. My ranch sits on a stretch of open land surrounded by sprawling hills and dotted with neighbors who value peace and privacy. It's a place that's seen more sunrises and dust storms than most city streets ever will. When I bought this property, I knew one thing for sure. I wanted to preserve that old-school ranch spirit. The kind where you don't need 1,000 HOA rules telling you how to live your life. Unfortunately, I learned fast that the HOA didn't share my vision. Enter Karen McGrath, the HOA president and the self-appointed queen of compliance. Karen was the kind of woman who carried a clipboard like a badge of honor and had a penchant for issuing letters that felt more like ultimatums. She seemed to believe that rules were created for the sole purpose of being enforced. Mercilessly. At first, the offenses were trivial, but oddly specific. A letter about the rustic look of my mailbox being out of compliance. "It must be repainted in the HOA-approved beige," she wrote, as if the entire ranch was part of some suburban cookie-cutter development. I responded respectfully, explaining that the mailbox was a nod to traditional ranch aesthetics, a tribute to heritage, not a crime. But Karen's replies were curt and final. Then came the fines. First $100, then $250, then more. Fines for excessive dust on my gravel driveway, for unauthorized landscaping that included planting native wildflowers, and even a warning about exceeding noise levels during my occasional weekend bonfires. The final straw was the gate. A few weeks before the lockdown, I noticed the keypad flickering oddly, access denied at strange intervals. When I called to ask about it, the HOA's response was icy. Security upgrades are necessary for the community. Manual overrides are being disabled for safety. Safety, they said. What they really meant was control. One afternoon, I confronted Karen at a neighborhood meeting. "Why all these restrictions?" I asked. "This is my home, not a gated prison." Karen smiled thinly. "Rules are rules, and enforcement keeps our community safe and consistent." That was the moment I realized talking wasn't going to solve anything. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, the HOA's behavior escalated in ways that made me question if I was in a suburban nightmare or an absurd comedy. Fines kept rolling in with absurd claims. One notice accused me of unauthorized water usage that supposedly violated HOA policies. A few days later, someone, probably HOA contractors, trampled through my newly planted wildflower beds under the guise of inspection. One evening, a mysterious sign appeared right on my front lawn. "Ranch out of compliance. Immediate action required." No explanation, no direct contact, just a sign planted like a scarlet letter. I started noticing neighbors casting furtive glances, whispering when they thought I wasn't looking. Rumors spread about HOA spying operations, and I wasn't surprised when the local sheriff's office got looped in over alleged security breaches at the gate. The gate itself? It was transformed into a fortress of frustration. If I tried to open it manually without HOA authorization, alarms would blare, security cameras would activate, and a notification would be sent to Karen's phone faster than I could blink. One particularly surreal moment was when Karen sent an inspection team, who claimed to be checking my water meter, but instead left muddy footprints all over my driveway and crushed my prized rose bushes. Through it all, I felt a storm of emotions. Shock, disbelief, frustration, but also a stubborn determination not to be cowed. Amid the chaos, I found small wins. A neighbor quietly handed me copies of HOA meeting minutes, revealing their procedural errors and rule bending. Another secretly emailed recordings of Karen berating residents behind closed doors. Those small victories became fuel for my fire. But the gate lockout? That was the signal that the gloves were off. I knew it was time to fight back, not just with letters or meetings, but with a plan. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. Weeks before the final lockout, I had a secret weapon. I installed a hidden backup key system, a secret entrance the HOA would never suspect, an old service gate tucked behind a thicket of mesquite trees. But more than just an escape route, I began gathering evidence. I documented every letter, every fine, every incident of harassment. I reached out to local journalists, legal experts, and even county officials. Then came the trap. Knowing Karen's obsession with control, I programmed the gate's new security upgrades to trigger only when the HOA tried to abuse their power, locking their codes out remotely and setting off alarms. I invited a few trusted neighbors for a ranch watch meeting under the pretense of community safety. With discreet cameras rolling, we captured Karen and her team attempting unauthorized entry. Around the property, I posted new signs. Private property under citizen surveillance. Trespassers will be prosecuted. These weren't just warnings. They were statements of defiance. What the HOA didn't realize was the cracks in their power were beginning to show. Karen's confidence began to falter, and I knew the time to strike was near. The day of reckoning arrived like a quiet storm. Karen, flanked by her usual crew of enforcers, strode up to the gate, cards in hand, sure of their victory. They swiped their cards, and boom, the trap sprung. Alarms shattered the evening calm. Floodlights blinded them. Their access codes were instantly disabled. Cameras captured every confused, frustrated reaction in crisp detail. Neighbors emerged from their homes, phones recording, eyes wide with disbelief. Within minutes, the local sheriff pulled up, not to arrest me, but to investigate the HOA's violations. Media crews arrived, hungry for a story about the little rancher who outsmarted the all-powerful HOA. Karen's empire of control crumbled under the weight of her own hubris. As I stood beside the gate, watching it swing open with my backup key, I looked at her and said, "Sometimes the best defense is a well-placed lock, and a little patience." Justice wasn't just served, it was served with a flourish. Looking back, the whole ordeal taught me a valuable lesson. Standing up for your home means more than just fences and gates. It means standing firm in your rights, calmly and cleverly. The HOA thought they could bully me into submission with endless fines, locked gates, and endless rules. But they forgot one thing: the spirit of a rancher is never so easily broken. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this: preparation, patience, and a dash of creativity can turn even the toughest battles in your favor. Have you ever faced an overbearing HOA or a similar fight for your rights? What would you have done in my shoes? I want to hear your thoughts. Comment, "Justice served," if you stuck with me till the end. And remember, sometimes the best way to keep your gates open isn't just about holding the key, but knowing when to close them and turn the tables. Thanks for watching. Stay smart, stay sharp, and keep fighting for your home. Because sometimes a locked gate is just the beginning of a story worth telling.